'cause I'm going down the road to a brand new place, and I'll get there with a smile on my face. Yeah, so lift me up, I'm moving on, singing and dancing while I play my song.
Welcome, your Backup Plan tribe, to another great, awesome show. I'm so very excited for everybody. Welcome if you are new here. Thank you for coming and watching our show. Thank you. Welcome to your Backup Plan tribe. If you are new here, my name is Tina Ginn. I am Talking Taboo with Tina show, brought to you by your Backup Plan app. We focus on real, raw conversations with our listeners about their journey from a life-changing event in their life. And I'll tell you, do we have a life-changing event with our wonderful guest from Florida today. Her name is Christine Arico. I think I said that right. Please, I hope so. And I'm so very excited to bring her into our show today about, getting bullied every day at school. I can hardly wait to hear the story. I am an emergency preparedness coach, a best-selling author of In the Blink of an Eye. Yes, it happens that quickly. It can happen that quickly. Your life can change in a split second, not even a blink of your eye. I am a financial expert and an app developer of your Backup Plan app. I'm located here in beautiful Vancouver, BC. It's not so beautiful. I guess it's that way. It's not so beautiful today. We're going to get our first storm since July. So thank you, gods, to bring us some rain in the crazy Seattle, Vancouver, West Coast area. I can't believe we're known for rain, but we don't seem to get it. So that may create floods. That might create some other types of storm watches, electric outages, and all sorts of things. And that's what I'm all about here on our show. Having a plan, having a backup plan for whatever might come your way. You just never know. With the storm, you don't know what's going to come. You don't know if you need to have an emergency grab-to-go bag. Do you have one ready? Do you know what to put in one? Do you know what to keep in the car or at home? Do you have photos of your home taken? And that's what we talk about in our show and our workshops and in our app and in our new coming up course that's coming up for caregivers particularly. We are going to be having a program called Caregiver Rescue. And it's to help all those caregivers out there that either are struggling in caregiving or who are going to be a caregiver and they don't know what they're in for. Let me tell you. Yeah, it's a big job, and I don't wish it on anybody actually, because it can be very difficult depending on what your patient is troubled with. Could be dementia or a stroke or a physical disability or other sicknesses. It's a very difficult job, and I want to commemorate all that struggle with caregiving. So what does your Backup Plan app mean? It means that we put everything in one place in case of any unpredictable circumstance while taking that painful aftermath out of that tragedy. So if you ended up with COVID, for example, and you're in the ICU, who's going to be looking after your bills? Who's going to be paying your electricity bill? Who knows how to pay your mortgage? And sometimes even between partners and spouses, the other person doesn't even know how to pay the bills, or having an extra person to come in and be able to look after that. But we don't like to give out all our secrets, We don't like to put all of that out on the table with strangers or even family or friends. So it's nice to be able to put it away into an app that it's there when you need it the most. So let's get this party started. I want to thank all those American listeners, all those Canadian listeners. You've been sticking behind me for over 3 years now, so thank you very, very much. I'd like to welcome our next biggest group is Germany. Und meine deutsche Freunde sind unserem Podcast willkommen. Wenn Sie Kommentare haben, können Sie gern Fragen stellen. Also danke für deine Freundschaft und danke für Zuhören. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ireland. You guys are next. I do not have an Irish accent for you yet. I'm going to work on that as you progress up as for my listeners. So thank you. Let's bring Christine on. I can hardly wait to get the story. Hi, Christine. Thank you for coming on our show today. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you. And, you know, our story called I Was Bullied Every Day at School. I know you can totally relate to that. Severe cleft lip and palate. Christina Rico is in Gainesville, Florida. We call her Coach Christine. She is a confidence and transformation coach for specializing with severe, for cleft lip and palate issues, I guess you could say, or if you fall into that realm, I guess, so to speak. So tell us, where did all of this start for you, Christine?
Okay, well, I guess I'll start right at the very beginning. I was born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate, and we actually have a picture that we can have Tina show. Shows you what it looks like when I was born. This is a picture of me when I was about a month old. As you can see, I have the cleft lip. You can't see the palate, and so you can understand what I'm talking about. A cleft lip and palate happens when the lip or palate or both do not properly form before birth. It creates a gap from the upper lip that extends into the nose, and in my case, the palate. As a result, eating, drinking, even talking is very difficult because there is no boundary or no divider between the roof of your mouth and the nose. So when I was nursing, I couldn't even nurse. I couldn't.
I don't think they can breastfeed, can they, Christine?
No, they cannot. Babies with a cleft lip and palate have a very, very difficult time breastfeeding and even drinking through a bottle because we don't have the lip to form around the nipple. So as a result, my mother had to kind of hold the bottle and let the formula and let the milk drip down my throat, but then there was always a risk of choking.
Yeah.
I know she told me many times that I had problems with choking, aspirating where too much air gets into where the fluid gets into my lungs, so there was always that risk. Fortunately, nowadays they do have special bottles for babies with a cleft lip. It's called Dr. Brown's bottle, and it has the nipple is formed in such a way that it kind of forces the fluid, that it doesn't rely on suction, and it does not put the fluid. It only forces the fluid when the bottle is tipped, so there's less risk of choking. But when I was born in the 70s, breastfeeding was very, very difficult. Even as I got older, eating was also very difficult. So this first picture was when I was a month old, before I had all of my surgeries.
Oh, and how many surgeries did you have after that? Like after the
I've had more than 20 surgeries to repair the lip and my palate, and including dental implants. I had 2 bone grafts. I had multiple skin grafts. I had surgery to reshape my nose to add more flexibility to my upper lip. So 20 surgeries from the time I was about 2 months old. My last surgery was in my mid-20s when I was 29, and that was my last bone graft in preparation for my dental implants.
Wow, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And how many, because you were telling me backstage that people are more fortunate now with the medical technology that we have to make it a little bit easier for this, because there's different severities of it, right? Are there like the different degrees of it as well? So
absolutely, yes. So a baby can be born with a bilateral cleft lip and a bilateral palate, or just the lip can be affected or the palate can be affected. So I had a bilateral, which meant both sides of my lip and my palate were affected. Baby can also be born with only one side of the lip affected. So it's either the lip or the palate or both, and then it's either one side of the lip or one side of the palate or both. So, and there are different severities, there's different degrees. My case was pretty severe according to what the doctors told me. I've seen some babies born where I mean, in my case, the nose was shaped, but I've seen some babies born where the nose was not shaped at all. They had to be reconstructed. Where the lip was very widely spread apart. I've also seen some babies where it was a little bit more formed, so there wasn't as much of a gap. It is very, very varied, just like everything else in human nature. It can be very different. So fortunately, medical technology has allowed doctors to advance the surgeries. When a baby is born with a cleft lip now, instead of having surgery before the age of 6 months, they do what's called NAM taping, NAM taping, where they literally, it's like taping a box closed, where they put the tape across the lip and it closes the lip together so that when they do go in and do the surgery, it's not quite, they don't have to close as big of a gap. It's not as invasive. There's less scarring, and they can wait until the baby is a little bit older to do the surgery. So instead of having it at 2 months, they might do it at maybe 5 or 6 months, or even wait until almost a year when the lip is a little bit more shaped and developed. So it really depends on the team of doctors and the case and how the baby is when they're born.
Right, and how much is affected.
Exactly.
So I can hardly wait for you to tell us about your stories. I know it sounds kind of funny, but I was reading all the things that you grew up bullied with. And I don't know, listeners, but I've heard some awful things in my day. But what I heard about yours is quite something.
Absolutely.
So tell us about what that was like.
Absolutely. I would love to. So having a cleft lip and palate is a lifelong medical, psychological, and social journey. As a baby, I couldn't nurse or be bottle fed, and as I talked about, and when I was a kid, food and drink would come out my nose because of a hole in my palate. So blowing up a balloon, whistling, impossible tasks for me, and I still can't drink from a straw. So, and fortunately now I still have a little tiny hole in my palate, but it's not quite as bad. So I don't have any problems with the food and drink coming out my nose. But as a baby, I did. I couldn't bite into an apple. I couldn't eat corn on the cob. After my surgeries, I couldn't use any utensils because the doctors were afraid with the stitches in my palate and my lip, using a spoon or a fork might rip them open, cause them to bleed. So I had many, many meals that were liquid meals, that were milkshakes, things thrown in the blender, as I couldn't chew. As I got
We
older,
didn't have smoothies back then, Christine.
no, we did not have smoothies. I learned to be creative with smoothies and eat a lot of soup. And a little fun fact about me, orange Jello. That is the most repulsive food that I can ever imagine. Basically, all Jello. I don't like Jello because I eat so much of it in the hospital. They gave it to me immediately after the surgeries. They would infuse it with vitamins, protein, liquid protein. So that was like the only thing I could eat because it was soft. I didn't have to chew it. But for some reason or other, hospitals only had orange Jello, which I really like. I can tolerate some Jello, but not the orange one. So yeah, I have a very big aversion for the Jello, and so because of all the scar tissue from my surgeries and basically everything that was done, I have scar tissue from my ears, nose, and throat, and now as an adult, I have hearing loss and sleep apnea, which is kind of a side effect of having cleft lip and palate and all the surgeries.
And the nose part, yeah.
Exactly, and the nose part. When I get colds or sinus infections, they affect me a lot worse than they would someone without a cleft lip because of the scar tissue. I've had multiple ear infections when I was a kid. I couldn't go swimming because of the ear infections. I had tubes in my ears. So that's the medical side of it.
Yeah.
And then we can get into the dental part of it, because it's not just the surgeries, it's also the dental part. Because I didn't have an upper jaw, my teeth never properly grew in. So I had bridge work when I was 13, which is a lot younger than most people get permanent bridge work. I had permanent upper bridge work in my 20s. I had surgery to remove excess scar tissue in my 30s. I had another bone graft and my dental implants that you see now. And that was the permanent implant. So now at least I can bite into an apple, eat some corn on the cob. I still can't blow up a balloon though.
Well, that's not too bad, though. It's getting
That's
better.
not too bad. Exactly, yes. And then
I wanted
there's the
to
second-
remind everybody to press on that like, share, and subscribe button down below. Oh, and I have a new button too. Let's pop that in. There we go. Like, share, and subscribe down below. I was trying to get a little bit technology in there a little bit. So Christine, tell us about just what school was like growing up and what
Mhm.
these poor kids have to put up with.
Absolutely, yeah. And so that's the other aspect that is very rarely seen with someone with a facial difference, is the mental and the psychological aspect. Growing up, I was constantly bullied. I mean, it may seem all positive for me now, but I'll tell you there were dark times. And the
Oh
worst part
yeah.
of having a cleft lip and palate, or a cleft lip, because nobody can really see a palate, but having a cleft lip is very visible. The worst part is the bullying. From kindergarten through high school, kids called me names like Quasimodo and Monkey Face. And they said things to me like, "Your mother was kicked in the stomach while pregnant. And did you get kicked in the face by a horse?" And or they would say your mother had sex with a monkey, and they used to call me Monkey Face, and it's just random taunts and random comments. And
Did they
I
get worse as the ages got older?
when I got older, it did get worse because I went to an all girls Catholic high school, and girls can be very, very catty. That movie Mean Girls is not too far from the truth. And
Yeah.
the girls used to tease me and say, "No, nobody's ever gonna want to love me. I'll never get married. I'll never have a boyfriend because I look so ugly." They didn't want to be my friend.
It's
While my
almost like Beauty and the Beast, kind of.
exactly, it is. And even the boys were afraid of me. I was left out of the cool group of girls in high school. And, while my classmates were planning prom, I was planning another surgery that I needed to repair and remove some excess scar tissue. And sadly, I went to both prom, my junior prom and my senior prom, with boys who were not my date. One boy was the son of my mother's coworker, and another boy was the son of someone that I worked with, because I worked in an office part time when I was in high school. And my coworker had a son who was about my age, and he agreed to go with me. And I've
Oh,
often
that's nice.
wondered, it was very nice, but I also often wondered, did those boys go to the prom with me out of pity because their mothers asked them to, or because they were kind hearted? And my mother was always of the mindset that she didn't want me to miss out on any of the traditional school activities like prom. Looking back now, I would have rather have stayed home, because I honestly don't remember, even though it was like 40, 30 something, 40 years ago. I felt so ashamed that I didn't have a traditional date for a prom, a boyfriend or a boy who wasn't mine. I had someone who was asked to take me. I
Right.
didn't even ask for myself. So I looking back now, if I had to do it all over again, I say, you know what? I'd rather stay home and miss the prom and not go through the humiliation and the shame I felt of having someone take me who I really didn't know very well at all. Both boys, I met them maybe once before, just to kind of a cursory, so that we knew what each other looked like, and what our names were. But
And
that
the
was it.
name. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew nothing about them beforehand, and I think they were probably as uncomfortable as I was.
Did
And
it
then
start right in grade 1 for you?
the
You remember?
bullying, yeah, the bullying started from kindergarten. The kids would make fun of me. They would point and laugh. They would, say, "Hey, monkey face," or um, I remember in sixth grade, a lot of the boys would just tease me. They would say, "Oh, look here comes monkey face again," or "Hey, did you get kicked in the face by a horse?" Or once they started learning about sex, they said, "Oh, well, you look like that because your mother got, had sex with a monkey." And it didn't stop with the children. That was the worst part.
Do you think that was the hardest year, was grade 6? Do you recall? Do you think that was the hardest one?
That's a really great question. There wasn't any particular year that was hard. It was all of the years. Just all of my school years until I graduated high school was just kind of
The
like one of
same.
those, yeah, the same one of those memories that you wish you can forget, but you can't. The teachers didn't make fun of me, but they did tell me that I would never amount to anything in life. They said, "You miss so much school, you're never gonna be anything, you're always gonna be dumb." They thought that because I had a birth difference, it affected my intelligence, which it did not. I missed a lot of school because of surgeries and speech therapy, but I always managed to make up the work. My mother would get the assignments and bring it to me in the hospital, or I would work extra hard. I loved learning. I love education. I love learning. I still love it to this day. So that I wasn't going to let that stop me. I was
That's
very
good.
determined.
That's good.
Yes.
That didn't get
Yeah.
affected.
Hmm.
It's funny how people want to bully someone when they have a deformation on their face. But if they had like a half an arm or half a hand or half a
Hmm.
foot or something, they don't think that it affects the brain. But for some
Exactly.
reason, when it's on your face, they think it's all of your mental ability
Exactly.
as well as your mouth affected. It's strange how that works.
It is strange, and it's also, I think, it stems from lack of education and knowledge, and it stems from the ignorance about not realizing that this is just a physical difference. As we talked about backstage, it's skin and bones and tissue, and though it runs much, much deeper than the physical issue because it does get into the psychological and the mental part, but it did not affect my brain at all. It did not affect my intelligence. It did not affect my ability to learn. I mean, my ability to learn would have only been affected by my desire, my determination to learn. And, that's to say that I know some people with a cleft lip and palate, their childhood was so difficult because of the bullying and the
Yeah.
torment. And it affects the self esteem. It affects what you go on to do in life. I'm fortunate in that I was always of the mindset where I'm not going to let that hold me back, and I'm going to prove everybody wrong. But sometimes it takes a lot of inner strength and a
That's
lot
for
of
sure.
resilience to overcome that, to change that mindset, and to think differently. Because there were many times, I'll be totally honest with you, where I wanted to give up. Um, I've had many issues with suicidal attempts because
With
I
that,
thought
when you're in high school or even younger or later on?
it was in high school. It started, and I engaged in a lot of self harm. That's when I first realized I have a very high pain tolerance, which I attribute to, having my first surgery at 2 years old. You learn how to deal with the pain. But what I learned in high school was the self harm took away the emotional pain. It numbed it, and to this day, I still struggle with emotional pain and the emotion and my own emotions. I mean, fortunately, a lot of therapy has helped me accept my emotions, work through them, learn that they're not, the enemy. But in high school, growing up, to deal with the bullying, to deal with the shame I felt, to deal with how unliked and how disgusted I felt about myself, I engaged in self harm because that physical pain of harming myself removed it reminded me that I was still alive, but it also removed the emotional pain. It distracted me from really who I was or who I thought I was. And that was the belief that, everybody was telling me that I was this monster. I was disfigured. No man would ever love me. There were moms in
You
the
were
school.
stupid and
Yeah, I
everything.
was stupid. I would never amount to anything. And I kept hearing, and I can still hear it in my head as if it happened yesterday, the moms in the schoolyard saying, I'm glad she's not my daughter. I would have left her at the hospital. Or, another mother that said, oh, referring to my mother, saying, oh, her poor mother having a daughter that looks like that. And, you hear that and you're maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, or even a little bit older. And to hear another mother say that when they're picking up their child, it just makes you feel unloved. It makes you feel unwanted. It makes you feel like maybe I really don't belong living and being here. And
Like
I
you're a
would tell
monster.
exactly, like I was a monster. I felt like a monster. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. Um, I would often tell my mother about the bullying, what I was called, what the kids would say, the parents, and she used to tell me to ignore them, pretend I didn't hear them. That's a lot easier said than done because you cannot
That's for
unhear
sure.
something. Yep,
I mean,
and
it's hard enough for the person who has no physical um, issues or anything on their face or their body or anything, but even for you want to call them normal people that get
hmm
bullied for whatever reason. I mean, that's crazy enough too, because people just seems like they have to find something against you.
exactly, exactly. And my mother, she was my advocate. She did the best she could, taking me to doctors, to hospitals, getting the surgeries I needed, arguing with doctors when she thought that they could do better or surgical plans. But as she passed away, it'll be actually 5 years ago in the beginning of November, and she passed away. But the one thing, and this is, I guess, reason why I'm mentioning it, is for any parents of a child with a cleft lip impairment or any other facial difference or both difference, be there emotionally for the child. My mother was not there emotionally, and I think it was she just didn't know how to be there and how to be that supportive, emotional mother, and she was just probably afraid and a lot of fear of what she had to deal with me.
Right. Are you the only child too, Christine?
I'm not. I do have a younger sister. She's 4 years younger than me, and she's unaffected. She doesn't have a cleft lip, and she doesn't have any birth differences. And so my mother had to raise both of us. But I've always felt abandoned by my mother, emotionally abandoned. She never held me. She never hugged me. She didn't give me the affection that a mother needs to give a baby. And as a result, that combined with the bullying and combined with feeling abnormal, despite my mother telling me, oh, you're normal. You're just like the other kids. There's nothing wrong with you. You might look a little different, but you're still normal. Meanwhile, I knew I wasn't normal. I knew. I didn't feel normal. I didn't look normal. You can't tell me I'm normal. And, but she kept telling me I was, and I had to believe it because, she's my mother. What child does not want to believe their mother? And I thought, okay, maybe there is something really wrong with me in the head and something screwed up in the head that, I'm the abnormal one. And so that led me to think that, my childhood was normal, and I'm also become in denial about my cleft lip. When I got older, to help cope with the bullying and help cope with everything, in addition to the self-harm and the suicidal tendencies when I was in high school and college, I refused to talk about my cleft with anybody. Even doctors was very minimal, the bare necessity. I wanted to pretend I didn't have it. Growing up in high school, actually until about 6 years ago, doing what I'm doing today, being on a podcast, talking publicly about it. If you told me I would have been doing this 6 years ago, I would have said, no way in the world. You're crazy. Not going to happen.
And you even have a TED Talk too, so that's
yes,
crazy.
I even have a TED Talk about it where I go into the details and talk about my experiences. And so that was my coping mechanism, was denial. But and I had my true emotions. I didn't want anyone to know how tormented I was, how disgusted I felt. And so being in
So
denial kind
did
of
you
helped me.
just want to hurt yourself, or did you actually want to die? Like when you were doing
Mhm.
these things, what
I
was going on in your head?
I wanted to hurt myself because the physical pain erased the emotional pain. It The physical pain, it was like, okay, ouch, that hurts. I can feel that. That distracted me from what I felt about myself, the disgust, the shame, the thinking I was a monster. And it also gave me something to look at. To me, it was another scar on my body. I mean, although my self-harm scars are not visible, I was very careful to hide those from my mother because she was very judgmental and very critical. So she never knew about,
And she
my.
wouldn't have understood
No,
either.
she would not have understood. She would have berated me. She would have yelled at me. She would have said, "Well, what are you doing that for? You don't need to do that," and not understand what I was feeling.
That's the
So,
emotional part.
exactly.
Yeah.
I was very careful to hide them from anybody. I didn't talk to anybody. Um, my family, my friends, cousins, my mother, they would have all told you there was nothing wrong with me. I was a happy, jolly, joyful girl and teenager and even young adult and even in college when I started working. Nobody would have known how I felt inside and the
The feelings
psychological
must have got
darkness.
worse for you, Christine, when you came into puberty. I would think because your hormones take in and kick in
Yes,
and
yes.
feelings and
They
emotions change.
They did, and especially as I started to become interested in boys and dating and all the things that girls do when they get into high school and partners. And my mother always told me, she's like, "Oh, are there any nice boys?" Well, I went to an all girls high school, so there were no boys at school. And so she's like, well, and as I got older, when I got into college, it was always, well, when are you going to meet someone and get married? So I had that double pressure from her of meeting someone, getting married. That was her generation. Girls grow up, they meet someone, they get married, they live happily ever after in a house with a white picket fence. So as a result,
I
I
think
could
we all
not.
grew up like that for some reason.
Yes, yes, that
It's
the
like
fairy tale.
the little children's book version.
Exactly. So, because I had the pressure from my mother to meet someone and get married, and I just wanted to feel normal, I would go out and date anyone. I became very sexually promiscuous. I had, just anybody that would give me attention, because then it made me feel like, okay, maybe I'm really not the monster I am. I eventually did get married. I thought getting married would help me feel better about myself. I
You would
thought
think so.
Yeah, I would think so. Uh, but it didn't. I did not. At first I loved the man I married. I thought I loved him, but I was so emotionally immature that I didn't even know what love was because I wasn't shown love growing up in the traditional way. So I didn't know how to interact with people. I didn't know what love was. So I thought I had love. I thought I loved the guy. He loved me back. Um, we were married for a little over 10 years, but unfortunately, it was not long before it became an abusive marriage. It started out being verbal, then it moved into sexual, and I stayed with it because I thought, well, this is what a wife does, for better or for worse, and, commitment. But also because I had such low self esteem and self respect. And I thought so little of myself that I thought, this is the best I'm going to do. I remember
Well,
many
even
nights.
20 and 30 years ago, let's face it, we didn't really have much information about abuse in
Exactly.
behind the doors abuse.
e- Exactly.
Very much anyways. I remember seeing a little bit of movies about it of
Hmm.
actual hitting, but we weren't we weren't as knowledgeable as we are now.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And I also didn't know what a traditional normal marriage was. I mean, my parents, they stayed married together for 50 years until my mother passed away. But they had their arguments, they had their fights. There was verbal abuse that went on in that marriage, and between the two of them. And so I thought that was normal. And when my now ex-husband started treating me that way, I thought, well, this is what marriage is like. This is what I deserved. And I also thought I can't leave him because I'll never get married again and I'll never meet someone again. And I was under the impression that being in a relationship, being married, as my mother has so drilled into me, was the be all end all. If you weren't
Right. It was
married,
the
you were
answer.
nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, if I get married, then that means that someone else does not, they see me as a person and not a monster. And I thought that would help me feel better about how I saw myself and boost my self esteem. It didn't. And as a result, that's when I turned to drugs and alcohol to also help dull the pain, cope with the suicidal tendencies, and just the isolation.
And the
Probably
abuse.
and the abuse. And by then I was done with most of my surgeries. I didn't really need them because by the time I was 18, most of my surgeries done. I had another surgery when I was in my early 20s, but that was about it. Um, so going back to, so the other thing, the worst part of having a cleft is the isolation, is feeling so alone. I felt like the only person in the world with a cleft lip and palate. I hardly saw anybody else with a cleft. Occasionally I did, maybe when I went to the doctors, but they didn't want to talk about it. Neither of us
And
wanted to talk
out in the
about
real
it.
world, you didn't really see it either, right?
No, not very
Wasn't there a
often.
movie about it? Wasn't there a movie like 20 years ago
Um,
or something?
Not
Yeah.
specifically about cleft lip and palate. There has been some movies with characters nowadays that have cleft, but not then. And ironically, there are celebrities that have cleft lip and palate. Stacey Keach, Jesse Jackson had a cleft lip. Um, a couple of the other celebrities I'm drawing a blank at the moment. Um, Joaquin Phoenix is sometimes argued whether or not he has a cleft. Um, Let me see. Peyton Manning has a cleft palate. Carmen Bouchard from the Pussycat Dolls, she has a cleft lip. So there are celebrities that have a cleft lip and palate. Um, Cheech Marin from Cheech and Chong, he has a cleft lip. But even those celebrities, because of makeup, Hollywood filmmaking, they were able to hide it. So I really didn't see it much growing up. And as a
Maybe it's
result,
not as bad for a guy either. I think there's a male actor that kind of plays the tough guy in like criminal cases, and it just, with it on his face, it just makes him look like he's just tough.
yeah.
Whereas for a female, it's probably a lot harder to.
It is a lot harder for a female because of the stereotype of beauty, what beauty should look like, the images, having that flawless, perfect face, this flawless skin, no scars. So, yes, for a woman, it is very difficult. For a man, most of the time they can grow a mustache to hide the scars. You still have the speech, but men, they don't have the same beauty standards that women have. So yes, it is a lot harder for women, especially because of the shape of my lips and I put lipstick on, which I don't usually wear makeup. It's just personal choices, nothing wise. Just I'll be honest, I'm too lazy to put makeup on, and I just don't want to be bothered taking it off at night, so I never really wore makeup. But because I don't have a normal shaped lip, and when I do put lipstick on a rare occasion, it kind of accentuates my lips that look different.
Right.
But men don't have that. They can grow a mustache, and sometimes the scars show through, but
Not really, not as
not
much.
really.
Yeah.
Right.
What I really love what you're doing now to help others. Can you tell? And by the way, everybody, Christine's information is down below in the description box. I will add your TED Talk to that link as well, but I know it's your website information is down below. I really like how you're helping other individuals with the same problems that you've dealt with, and what better coach to have experienced it themselves to help others, because doesn't everybody just hate it when you go to say a chiropractor and your back is really all wrecked, or you have a broken vertebrae or something, and they say, oh, it's not a problem. They make it so like it's no big deal. And so if they haven't experienced the pain or they haven't experienced the injury themselves, it makes it very awkward, I think, for those people to feel it and experience it.
Mm-hmm.
So you've experienced all of these things. So I love what you're doing now and out there helping other people. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, about 5 or 6 years ago, I stopped denying my cleft lip and I started to accept myself for who I was, for having a cleft lip, for being unique, but also for how empowered and strong and resilient I am. And it was about that time that I joined a Facebook group for cleft for adults to have a cleft lip, and in joining that group, that went a long way toward my self acceptance, toward my self development. And so I decided about 2 years ago to become a coach to help adults with a cleft lip and palate, with other facial differences, who struggle with their own self esteem, their own self confidence, social anxiety, feeling, like a monster, feeling different. I work with them to
Dave,
help them. Yes, dating, yes, big dating issues, wanting to go out and meet people, that's always a big issue.
getting a job.
Getting a job, absolutely. I work with them to help them reach their goals, to help them realize that just because they look different, they have so much to offer the world. I help them build their confidence. I help them work on their self-acceptance and get the confidence to interact with people. We work together to learn how to talk to people, how to set boundaries, which is one of the things that for me was lacking, because I wanted to be accepted by everyone. I had no boundaries. And so a lot of people with a facial difference, I think, feel the same way. They have no boundaries because they want that universal acceptance. So I help them learn to set boundaries and respect themselves and build their own self acceptance. Because what I've learned is that when you have self respect, when you have self acceptance, and when you have self confidence, that's when you can be empowered to say no, to not get into an abusive marriage because you feel like that's the best you're going to do, and to go out and say no to people who might take advantage of you, who want to bully you. You can realize that their words
Or abuse you.
or abuse you. Yeah. And when you have that self acceptance and that self confidence, the words still sting, but they don't linger and they don't become part of who you are. You can realize that that's just the ignorance and the hatred of other people who don't know any better, but it's not who you are. It's not you as a person, because everyone, no matter what facial difference they were born with, everyone has something to offer and everyone is beautiful inside.
Have you had any unusual case that you've worked with?
Not any unusual cases specifically. I've just worked with a lot of people who struggle with the social anxiety. They're afraid to go out and interview for a job because they feel that they might not get it based on how they look. I can relate to that. I was passed over for many jobs because people thought, well, how can you work in business and be a secretary or be a receptionist when you have a speech problem and you look the way you do? And they didn't want me to be the representative of the company. And so I was afraid to apply for jobs. And so I work with my clients to help them realize that there's nothing to be afraid of, and to realize that they can apply for those jobs. And as long as they have the skills and the education and the qualifications,
And the
go out,
confidence.
and the confidence. So I help them build their confidence. I help them build their confidence to go out on dates, to meet people, to socialize, to realize that the fear of what people might say is a real fear, and we acknowledge that, but it doesn't have to hold them back, because the reward of pushing through that fear and the reward of talking to those people and meeting new people and making friends is so much more valuable and so much more beneficial than letting your birth difference hold you back.
And it's crazy because we're in two very different fields, you and I.
Mm-hmm.
But I find it so much similar because I help people get better prepared for the unexpected, and you help people get better prepared for what's to come.
Exactly.
Or what they would like to have to come in their life. And it's kind of cute how we're kind of both helping people, but in a little bit different way. I find it crazy how, do you think anything's changed from from when you were in elementary school to now? Do you think it's become easier for people?
I wish I could say it has, but sadly, I don't think it has. And that was one of the main points I made in my TED Talk, was my main goal, my main mission is inclusion. Just because we look different doesn't mean we need to be outcast.
But isn't that just for about anybody, whether they're black, brown, green, or red, or if they have a big nose or a small nose, or if they have blue eyes or purple eyes,
Yeah, it is. And that's my main point, is global acceptance of those of us that look different. And I think that global acceptance comes through awareness and education. And I wish I could say that the bullying is less, but I still hear stories of adults, children, and teenagers who are still bullied for how they look. And it hurts my heart. And one of the reasons why is Down syndrome, which we talked about backstage, is a birth difference that affects 1 in 700 babies worldwide. Everybody knows Down syndrome. They can identify the characteristics. They know generally that it's, an issue with an extra chromosome. Even children can recognize someone with Down syndrome and know that what it is. Cleft lip and palate also occurs in 1 in 700 babies worldwide, the same as Down syndrome, yet society is still woefully unaware and uneducated about cleft lip and palate. And it's the things that we are ignorant about that leads us to be afraid, or that leads to the bullying and leads to the public shaming and humiliation, because there is that fear, there is that stigma that, well, you look different than me, so I can't accept you, and I don't like you, and I'm going to make fun of you because it'll make me feel better. And so I think in some ways we've made tiny forward steps, but not a lot, and not as much as we could. And so my mission is to help raise awareness and education about cleft lip and palate, because I believe that if society is more aware of cleft lip and palate or any of these birth differences, if that happened when I was a child and society was aware of it, I would have faced less bullying, needed fewer surgeries, because doctors and dentists would have known the best course of treatment. And it's my hope and vision that we can create a safe and empowering environment and an inclusive environment for all cleft affected individuals, and drop the stigma and shame associated with having a facial deformity.
And it's not just kids either. You said it was adults as well.
Yes, it is the adults. It's the hard part is, when you sometimes go into a room or you go into a party, you meet strangers and they kind of shy away from you, or you can see their body language change. You just feel their energy shift, because there is that mental belief that, oh, you look different than me, so I don't know how to interact because you look different than me. And so that's my plea for adults as well, is just because someone looks different, accept them. I was talking to another person not too long ago who also has a birth difference. We just want to be accepted. We want to be part of the crowd. We want to be welcomed like everyone else, regardless of how we look. And I know that's the same for everyone, regardless of race, gender, lifestyle, anything. That we just want to be seen for man or woman or who we are, and not by our appearance.
It's like the ugly duckling story.
Exactly like that.
And when you're growing up and you hear about the ugly duckling, you feel so sorry for it. Or even today, I think a lot of people will take that animal that isn't just that perfect animal, but just because they can love it and look after it. But for some reason with people, we look at it somehow differently. I'm not sure why that is, but That's crazy because even adults can't seem to get their head wrapped around it either.
Yes, and fortunately, in the United States and in North America, I think the discrimination is not quite as strong as it is in some of the other countries. I volunteer with Smile Train, and Smile Train is a global nonprofit organization that trains medical professionals in undeveloped countries to perform cleft repair surgeries. So, as a result of my work with Smile Train, I had the opportunity to travel to Kenya last year, November of 2021. I traveled to Kenya, and in May of 2022, I actually traveled to Colombia to visit the hospitals that Smile Train trains the medical professionals at. I also had the opportunity to visit patients who were recipients of Smile Train surgeries who had their cleft lip repaired. And some of these were adults well into their 20s and 30s who lived their whole life with an unrepaired cleft and then had their cleft repaired. And the
Oh,
biggest thing that
wow.
yes, and the biggest thing that I learned is in those countries where they're so rooted in culture and beliefs and superstition, those people that had the cleft lip and palate were even more ostracized and more of an outcast than we are here in North America and in the United States and Canada and North American countries. And again, that's just largely due to the lack of knowledge, the lack of education, and to see those people that what their life was like before they had their surgery. One of my most memorable experiences was when I went to Kenya. I met a 16-year-old girl, and she just had her surgery about 3 years earlier. I could not imagine waiting almost 16 years for my surgery and growing up and looking the way I did for 16 years. And we talked, and what I realized is that she had the same dreams I did at 16. She wants to go to college. She wants to get married. She wants to be a beautician. And we talked about that. And she couldn't realize many of those dreams before because she didn't go to school. They actually didn't let her, if I understand correctly, she wasn't able to go to school because she was bullied so much. And when she had the surgery, she was able to go to school. She made friends. Her self-confidence grew. She had this bright smile about her. She was amazing. And seeing that, even though we came from different countries, different continents even, we shared the same challenges.
Yes, the same story, basically.
Yes, the same story. It was just so heartwarming and so inspirational.
Wow, that's crazy. What kind of I hate to go because I'm learning so much and I think there's so much to be said about putting this out there for people to learn more about
Mm-hmm.
what people feel like and how they think. And what other two questions? So,
Mm-hmm.
what message would you like to leave the listeners? But is there any other words that are used that people used for it?
Mm-hmm. That's a really great question, and I'm glad you asked. In the past, there used to be the word hair lip, and I avoid using that word because today it is considered a derogatory term. A brief little background: it originated from an old wives' tale and myth and folklore that the sun sent a hare or a rabbit to give a message. The rabbit didn't deliver the message. I may have gotten the story a little mixed up, but that's the origin of it. And so the sun punished the hare by splitting the lip. That's where the term hair lip came from.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's a derogatory term. For many of us in the cleft community, it is triggering. It brings up old memories of being bullied. And so again, a lot of doctors and older people use it. My father used it to refer to my cleft lip for most of my life until I corrected him and said, that's really hurtful. And doctors didn't even know. So really the proper term is cleft lip and palate, or just a cleft lip or a cleft. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I had heard that, but again, not really knowing if it was even the same thing, really, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
Um,
the same thing. And actually, about a couple of years ago, talk show host Wendy Williams made fun of the cleft community and those of us with a cleft lip by almost using the word hair lip when she was referring to actor Joaquin Phoenix when he was promoting his movie The Joker. And that was, it created a pretty big backlash and outcry. And I think she did eventually publicly apologize. But again, it's just the lack of knowledge and the
mhm.
ignorance that people don't realize that hair lip is a derogatory term, and it needs to be banned from our society.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Hmm.
All these old words and nursery rhymes and things that we used to say and never really, I never really paid much attention. It was just like a little song or whatever it was at the
Hmm.
time, and never really thought anything bad about the words that we used. It was, I guess, different. We didn't try to analyze everything back then.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. We didn't analyze. It was a lot of societal norms, and fortunately, progress is being made. Slow progress, but it is being made.
It is very slow
Mhm.
over many years. What kind of final message would you like to leave the listeners, Christine?
I would like to leave them with a message to continue to educate yourself. If you see someone with a birth difference, accept them and acknowledge them as for who they are. Don't be afraid of them. And in some cases, if you feel courageous enough, maybe you can approach them and just gently ask, "Hey, may I ask what happened? May I ask, what your scars are about?" Oh, excuse me. Um, and I would also like to leave the listeners with the information that
Take your time.
you have the power within you to build your confidence, to be strong, and to overcome anything. Those of us born with a birth difference, we're born with a level of adversity and resilience and courage to reach our goals. So don't let anybody tell you that you can't do what you want, that you can't be whoever you are. I have friends with a cleft lip and palate. They're attorneys, professional ballet dancers, marketing directors, former police sergeants. We can do it all. We can do anything we want to. And so believe in yourself and don't let your appearance stop you from going after your dreams.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you,
Hmm.
Christine. That's very beautiful.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So please, I'm sorry to have to end our show. My goodness, I could talk about it forever with Christine because I think it's really important to actually learn a lot about this so that we don't continue this behavior. There's a lot of birth defects inside and outside of our bodies
Hmm.
that affect us in different ways. And I love what you were saying, and I love what you do to help other people. So please take a moment and like, share, and subscribe to our show. Get my button up there, just down here, and get my hand out. Because, I'd like to have everybody to be able to be notified that you can share this show with other people so that they can learn something about the cleft lip and palate. They can learn something about birth defects and how this wonderful Christine has been brought to the world to help others and understand and educate everybody. And look at her go, and she's going around the world doing it. So that's beautiful. If you are thinking about someone special watching this show, please take a moment and, phone them. We still have phones. Text them, Zoom them, FaceTime them, whatever it is, knock on their door and tell them how much you love and care about them because you don't know what tomorrow might bring. You don't know if you're going to have tomorrow. You don't know if they're going to have tomorrow. So take a moment and make sure you do that today. Stay tuned for our podcast and our live streams. I have great conversations with some of the most interesting and accomplished people in the world, just like Christine. I think you'll be entertained, informed, and motivated. And I hope that we've inspired you to just take that moment, create that, that unique plan for yourself and your family. Nobody is Superman. Nobody. So expect the unexpected. And thank you again for all our returning listeners and our new listeners. We are on all podcast platforms: Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, and we have a Facebook VIP group that have like-minded people that share their stories and ask questions about estate planning, financial planning, as well as things to do leaving a legacy. For example, we have fun workshops just about the kind of things that we can leave for our family and friends as a legacy. And those are always great times doing some treasure finding things to do. I'd like to love each and every one of you for watching our show today. And I always end our show with Carol Burnett. And I know, Christine, you know who Carol Burnett is.
Yes, I do.
I'm so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just get started, and before you know it, comes a time we have to say so long. So long, everybody. It was wonderful having you here, and thank you, Christine, for coming on our show today.
Thank you very much, Tina, for having me. I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, Christine. Till next time, everybody, stay safe, be kind. Till next week, or till tomorrow. We have another show. See you soon. Bye for now. Bye.